Okay, so I'm gonna run you through the exact setup that's very, very key when it comes to hook, bait, weight size, rigging methods, everything that's gonna help you catch more fish on the Neko rig. So first and foremost, let's start with the hook. A lot of guys like a longer shank hook. Some guys like this style hook. Some guys like a circle style hook. This is my favorite that I have ever used, and it is the Ryugi Talisman heavy guard version. Now, when you say heavy guard, you're thinking it's a heavier hook or it might be a super thick weed guard. It's not that at all. Still the light gauge hook that I really like for drop shotting, but it comes with these wire guards on it. Two really, really thin wire guards that I haven't noticed impede with any hook sets or catching fish, but they do keep it very, very weedless. I throw this thing directly into brush piles a lot of times, and generally you're getting that bait out of there, which is very good. I don't want to throw to a fish on scope that I'm seeing and then have it get fouled up in a little stick or a piece of cover with that exposed hook. So I really like those little guards on there. And then the two different styles of worms that I throw exclusively on this presentation are the Sense Bamboosa, which this is more of a salted stick bait style presentation that's gonna fall quickly, but it also has this really lively tail on it, so you kind of get the best of both worlds. And then the 6.3-inch Divine Shaky Worm from Sense, which is more of your traditional 6-inch shaky worm, thinner style profile. And I like them for different types of scenarios. So when I notice the fish want a faster fall to get them to react to the bait, or I'm fishing a little bit deeper in the water column, or I just, it's windy, it's harder to cast, whatever it might be, that's when I'll pick up the 6.3 Divine Shaky Worm. And when I'm fishing this, it's always going to be for that faster fall or greater casting distance. And so I will throw this exposed mushroom style jig head and a little bit heavier than I'll use in the Bamboosa, which we'll talk about in a second. But I'll insert it in the end, usually with a little bit of super glue. We're not gonna make a mess with that right now. But this size is almost always gonna be an 1/8 or a 3/16. Seldomly I'll go up to a 1/4 if I'm fishing super deep water. But I think, an 1/8 is a great size because it's still gonna have a little bit more of a natural fall than just, rocketing past their face. So one more step that I'm gonna use for both of these worms, it's very, very important, is I love this little G-Crack Neko Hack. This is my favorite way to rig these style baits without casting them off when you give it that hard cast. So I'll look at my bait straight up. I'll go about, I'd say about 1/3 of the way up. And I'll insert that Neko Hack nice and even in there. I'll clip off the excess, no problem. And then we can insert our little Talisman heavy guard perfectly vertical in this worm. And I like to grab a little bit of meat from that worm too. I don't like the Neko Hack to be sticking all the way out. I like to have a little bit of meat in there in the worm. It just holds everything together really, really nicely. And that Neko Hack's great because, like I said, you can slang that worm as hard as you can and it'll hold it nice and tight in there better than any other system, better than an O-ring. To me, it's more natural. You're not adding any type of unnatural black or giant clear ring around it. I think they've just seen a lot of that type of thing, and this is my own personal preference. But I will throw this to fish that I'm seeing on scope or just drag it offshore with this one. So the other style that I like to throw is the slower falling, which might be a little bit counterproductive, you might think, because you're throwing the heavier stickworm style with this little tiny itty bitty insert nail weight. But I'll take one of these tungsten weights, it might be 1/64th, 1/32nd, 1/16th and under really. With that insert weight, you're gonna put it in that head. I'll stick it all the way through there so you can't see it. And this is kind of the nice thing about the Neko Hack as well. Even though you ripped out that sharper side of it, I still find that you can still use the little point that's on there to stab it through this style of bait. And one thing I do want to mention is when I'm fishing this more stickworm style of bait, I'm going to spear it a little bit closer to dead center on that worm. And this one is going to be different because it's obviously going to be a lot slower fall. And the lighter a weight you go on this stick worm, the wider of a spiral it's going to have on the fall. So if you're noticing the fish are eating it a lot on the fall, or they're feeding up, or even if you're throwing at fish, you know, I probably shouldn't share this, but some fish that are up in the column on bait, and you might be in 35, 50, 80, 100 feet of water and they're on bait and they're really hard to catch that jighead minnow. A lot of times this slower spiraling fall, shake that worm right over the top of the head, just like you shake that minnow, can be absolutely deadly. Of course, super shallow water, very good bait. And once this thing hits the bottom, comes to rest, you're basically fishing a wacky rig with just a little bit faster fall. So it's a little bit quicker and more efficient than your traditional wacky rig. So that's my setup right there. Rod, reel, line. I like a 7.2 medium action, medium fast power. Sorry, 7.2 medium fast action, medium power rod. From 6 Sense Fishing, and then I'm throwing it on 10-pound braid to an 8 or a 10-pound fluorocarbon leader all the time. Leader length isn't super important to me. I'm always keeping it, you know, anywhere from 5 to 8 feet long generally, making long cast as possible to those individual fish or whatever target I'm fishing. This is an absolutely deadly tool, both with LiveScope, cleaning up fish that you just fish through with a power fishing bait, or just blind casting around in areas you know are very productive. This is going to catch fish when a lot of things won't.